Hey you, and welcome. My name is Mike, and in this old video, what we are doing today is going to Oregon to look at a story of love and a story of hate. And, well, you know, what they kind of usually lead to, in the context of me telling it. On the outskirts of Portland lies the city of Gresham, and in that city lived Annastasia. Lovely name, bit unlucky, and definitely in this one, so let's see why, by giving it a go. In the suburb of Gresham, you got beautiful views, you can see that big ol' Mount Hood, you got your forests, and the biggest issues, according to, reviews on niche.com, are intolerance, boo, homeless camps, and, the big one, a lack of vegan food variety. Well, everyone has their own priorities. But what was a priority to the, Gresham City Police was this 911 call. It was made at around 3 AM on the 10th of June 2016.
How can I help you? I'm hurt, children. Do you need an ambulance? What happened? Somebody tried. Where is this person at now? I'm not here. Do you know the name of the person that did this to you? No. Are you bleeding a lot?
In an apartment off Eastman Parkway lived 34-year-old Annastasia Hester. Annie, born Annastasia Holmes in 1981, was a native Oregonian, growing up in the same area she lived now. She was the daughter of Charles and Elizabeth. Wait, her mother is Elizabeth Holmes? She had previously worked at Champion, an after-school program for the kiddos, but lately she was working in Stericycle, a waste management company. No, she wasn't in the mafia. Annie, she had a daughter named Alice. She had been married for about 5 years to a man named Matt Hester from 2008 to 2012. Annie was extremely devoted to her daughter, now as a single mother. Annie and Matt, after their divorce, they came to an amicable arrangement regarding their daughter. But when she wasn't working, she certainly was the creative sort. She loved making Christmas ornaments, cards, and she was skilled at face painting and henna too. So when she made that, frankly quite disturbing 911 call in June 2016, it seemed like it all came crashing down. When the police arrived at her apartment, thankfully her daughter Alice wasn't there. She was at her dad's house for the weekend. But when the emergency services and stuff, they arrived, you know, Annie, who just made the 911 call, she was now unresponsive. She was bleeding out. She'd been stabbed all over, and she was immediately rushed to hospital, but after just a couple of hours, she would pass away. When the police arrived, the door was unlocked, and bloody footprints were found leading out. In the backyard, the window-mounted AC unit was outside, like dangling, as if someone had removed it to gain entry to one of the windows in Annie's apartment via, you know, the gap. The window which led to her daughter Alice's bedroom. Well, that's not good. Alice's bedroom was in fact the only bedroom in that small apartment. Annie herself, she slept on a pull-out, couch bed in the living room. It looked like it had been in use, and judging by the fact the phone call was made so late, the initial thought was someone had broke in and attacked Annie while she was sleeping. Like I said, luckily Alice wasn't there at the time. It's an extremely brutal scene. Annie had been stabbed over 60 times. There was a lot of lost blood. Multiple knives were found at the scene, so that's a bingo right there. Although that could mean more than one person was involved. One was a folding knife, likely the killer's own. The others were Annie's own kitchen knives. Whoever did what was done to Annie, they really wanted to make sure, you know?
So we just got an update from Gresham Police. Unfortunately, they're no closer to solving this mystery than they were yesterday. They still don't know who killed Annastasia Hester. In fact, they say they need the public's help in finding out. We did talk to a family member who didn't want to go on camera, who said they feel it's a stranger because Annastasia, they said, did not have any enemies. Now, yesterday, Multnomah County search and rescue teams were out assisting with this investigation, combing through the dense brush near the Springwater Trail, looking for any clues to try to figure out just who might want to do this to this young mom.
As the investigation began, the police found out from the scene of the crime. Annie lived in an apartment building, so it was hoped that, someone might have heard something, seen something, in the surrounding. And luckily, they had. They had actually heard quite a commotion the night before. At around 11:30 p.m, some of the neighbors reported hearing screaming, a thud, doors slamming, cars racing off. It was a fierce commotion now, let me tell you. People thought they were, somebody's having a real good time out there. They realized they weren't having a very good time when the Ninas showed up. But what that told the police was immediately if that neighbors heard commotion, screaming at around 11:30, and then Annie was able to call 911 shortly before she passed away at around 3 a.m. So from 11:30 to 3 a.m, this has been going on for quite some time. She had been tortured to death. What's most interesting, though, is that even though it lasted almost, 4 hours, after all that time, Annie, she didn't know who it was. She said on the 911 call she hadn't got a clue, which makes you think it certainly wasn't someone she knew at all. But regardless, the investigation would start with people she did know. 35-year-old Matt Hester, he was first up. The estranged husband tends to be the boogeyman in these situations. But, one look would tell you he probably wouldn't be up to much. He used a cane and complained that due to some medical issues, he was in constant pain. That's what he told the police.
And so I guess, obviously I told you at the house that your ex-wife is deceased. Mm-hmm. But you didn't say how or anything. We'll talk about that in a minute or two. Okay.
Interestingly, though, the most he would do when told of his ex-wife's gruesome murder would be the old... That's tough.
She said that she had been stabbed. Officers responded down there. She had been injured. She was transported to the hospital, and she was pronounced dead at the hospital. And at this point, we're investigating this as homicide. Did your ex-wife say anything about having any problems with anyone?
I don't talk about her personal life.
Okay.
Seems that Matt had been cheating on Annie, hence the divorce, but they stayed on good terms overall. For Alice, if nothing else.
How are your feelings towards Anne?
Mostly indifferent. I want to deal with her as little as possible.
Matt would then go on to marry a woman named Angie McCraw. She had her own kids and they'd have a little family of their own. Neither Matt nor Angie worked. They were chilling out permanent. Matt, though, what he was going to do and make a big in was penning fantasy stories. He had this whole fantasy universe, done out. See, in the real world, he was simply 35-year-old Matt Hester, dole artist. But in here, he was Sargon Dorsey, creator of a fantasy universe. He dreamt of other epic worlds. Entel, specifically. If that sounds pretty rad, let me tell you more. It makes Middle-earth look frankly, like shit. Legends speak of a time when the world was one. They speak of a time when the mortal races lived together in harmony and prosperity. They speak of the general peace that was maintained between the races. They speak of the ones who shattered that peace and sundered the world apart. Okay, it drones on a bit, get this guy an editor. Blah blah blah. Legends speak of that which has come before, and legends will be written of what shall take place. What all the legends speak of you. Welcome to the world of Entel. It was an MMORPG he was working on, and it featured such races as the Shari, the Rashan, the Shartha, the Woodlings, and the Groka. This was almost a fully thought out fantasy world and all that shit. Now, I'd consider myself bit of a nerd, pretty nerdy guy. Reading through all this bullshit was even giving me acne. He was a big fan of D&D and Magic the Gathering, and so that sort of genre was his niche. He even provided video updates. Listen up.
I'm pleased to say that I've continued the trend to get my dreams written down every day. Today is Sunday, July 24th, 2016. This is the first of what I hope to be a weekly video log, just going over what I've been working on for the past week in terms of writing, some gaming with my wife, getting that uploaded on YouTube. The project I'm most excited about actually just started today, and that's sharing the races for Enteal Chaos Prophecies. That's the MMORPG that I'm helping to develop. This week I introduced the Rashan, which is one of our lizard races. You'll find the link to that particular blog entry in the links below. When you're writing and building, there are a lot of details that go into the background for that world. Especially when you're building something in a completely new setting with new races, new lands, new histories. New histories? Is that a thing? We've got lizard people, cat people, snake people, a race that is still defying explanation. That's what I've been working on. And thanks for stopping by. 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 Thanks for stopping by.
Or he would post videos as Sargon Dorsai, playing video games with his wife, with Angie. Here is Matt and Angie playing together on July 20th, 2016, over a month after Annie's death.
I'm not being Dahaka, so fuck off. No, I need to be Dahaka because I only need a little bit more to level him up.
Well, what's your quest for today?
Play 8 games.
Play 8 games? Mine's only win 3 games. Okay, fine.
As always, links down below if you'd like to read more about his wonderful universe. It's great stuff. Let's move on. In recent times, though, things between Matt and Annastasia had been on the rocks. This was due to essentially a couple of months before. Annastasia had been given full custody of Alice, and, well, things were roughing up.
I mean, obviously, we gotta consider all possibilities here, and I'm sure you've seen TV. When we have situations like this, you know, everybody points to the ex-husband did it.
I want to help you guys, because...
And I want to...
Sorry. I think I'm worried about is my daughter.
I hear you. Matt, if you had anything to do with Anne's death, I need to know about it right now.
I did not. I would never do anything that would endanger my child.
Okay. And I'm glad to hear you say that, because that tells me what kind of parent you are. Is there any way to find your DNA involved in that murder scene?
No.
The police questioned the hell out of Matt. They wanted to wiggle him. They even lied and said they knew he did it, which is such a fucking shitty police tactic, by the way.
I need to let you know that my investigation clearly shows that you're responsible for Anne's death, and you're involved in it intimately. There's
well, then you would have charged me. So.
No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't.
If you thought I did, you would charge me.
No, not necessarily.
Nothing to do with her death.
Have a seat right there.
Angela was questioned to confirm Matt's story. I mean, whether Annie and Matt were on good terms, he just didn't seem capable physically of doing what had been done, but they wanted to double check with Angie. And they both confirmed they hadn't left the house. Their stories stood up. Except one little part. Angie said that at about 3 AM she had to let the dogs out to go potty. And then she herself had to go potty, because she talks like a fucking child, apparently.
Took him potty, came back upstairs, and then I went to go potty and ended up puking and myself at the same time.
Oh, that's horrible. I'm sorry.
Then she got sick, and Matt had to help her, and they showered together.
Called Matt to help me, and he came and helped me. He took a shower to help get the poop off and rinse some of the sweat off, because apparently I was sweating.
Now, Matt never said he got out of bed that night.
So what were you and Angela doing last night?
Sleeping.
Okay. Do you know what time you went to bed?
I usually get into bed around 10 o'clock.
Okay.
The story doesn't match. And Matt and Angie showered together at about 3 AM, right around the time the killers left Annie's house. Maybe at a time when the killer might be washing the blood off? Thinker. Something that was also odd was that other people lived in Matt and Angie McGraw's house, not just their kids. Rent must be a bitch. And it must be quite the bitch, because one of the roommates was Aaron McGraw. Wait, what? Did I read what I wrote right? Angie's ex-husband and father of 2 of her children. Bit awkward that her ex-husband is living now with the new husband. God knows what goes on in their bedroom. Who am I to judge? You know, what weirdos do. But Aaron happened to be out that night. Another roommate said he saw Matt and Angie in bed around midnight, and they slept into the living room. And the final roommate lived in the garage, and she said their car, which was right outside, so she would have heard it if it had been, driven. She didn't, so they never left, according to her. Okie dokie then, so that's that. Matt told the police that Annie was into the polyamorous love scene. Very nice.
The guy she's seeing was in a relationship, and Anne was in a relationship with both of them, the guy and the girl.
So Anne was dating both the female and the male.
Correct.
It seemed that Annie had been involved romantically with quite a few people. Fair play to her, but that just led the investigation in like a million different directions. Ultimately, all of them would be dead ends, but this is kind of funny, is that apparently one of the scenes she was involved with is that they all like to dress up as pirates and bang. Honestly though, that sounds pretty fucking cool. Show me your arse! But hunting down that, the only rear ends they saw were dead ends. That doesn't make sense. And so it all comes back to Annie not knowing who it was. Was it random, a passerby, some psycho out there? Well, it is Portland. Ha ha ha. The only solid evidence they had was that a neighbor's security camera showed, get this, a car driving out of Matt and Angie's home shortly before 11 p.m. They had said they hadn't left, and it certainly was their car, and it was seen driving all the way towards Annie's house. It pulled up right around the time neighbors heard that scream, and then left around the time Annie called the cops. What about the roommates? One said they saw them in bed. The other said they didn't hear the car leave. Well, the one who said they saw them in bed could have either been mistaken or just lying. Ditto the second. They could have rolled the car out of the driveway so they wouldn't have heard it leave. Or again, she was just lying. The only catalyst that seemed clear was the custody issue from a couple of months before, in May. Annie got full custody, and apparently it got nasty, including calls to Child Protective Services on each other, calls that were baseless. And neither Matt nor Angie worked, so what they did to pay the bills was, well, I got a full-time job applying for benefits, baby. They would have, their children diagnosed with various ailments to get some money, some benefits. And so, well, having Alice around would add a few more cha-ching to their monthly income, you know what I'm saying? That then worked against Matt, and Annie ended up getting full custody. What Matt got in return was 42 grand in court fees and child support payments. He'd even lost his driver's license due to not paying child support.
My wife's recording this, so she's sending me strange looks.
But now, in all of this, they still didn't know who the actual killer was, because in that footage, they couldn't see who's in the car. A funny story, though, is that less than a week after Anastasia's death, Matt called up the insurance company to ask about her life insurance policy. You wouldn't happen to know if either me, ex-husband, or Alice, the daughter, would happen to be beneficiaries of her life insurance policy, would you? Oh, it's a negative for parents? Well, this wouldn't happen until... It seems Matt may have thought he was the beneficiary of Annie Hester's life insurance policies, and he was wrong.
It has been 1 year since the brutal murder of a Gresham mother, and whoever killed her is still out there.
A year later, detectives tell me the case is far from cold, but remains unsolved.
Do you think it's a stranger or somebody she knows?
We're not sure. We haven't ruled out either at this point.
The police did get a clue on Angie's phone when they found she purchased shoes that matched the bloody footprints. Tracking their phones, and after a big ol' search, they would find the murder boots in the woods. It was almost a year and a half after Annie's death in October 2017 that an arrest was made. This took so long because, well, getting a DNA sample was very difficult. Not much had been left behind, but they did find one microscopic fragment, which, due to advances in the technology, could say Angie Hester McGraw had been there. They were now living in Pocatello, Idaho. Matt, who had walked with a major limp before, was now healthy as a horse, and Angie was arrested for the murder of Annie Hester.
In the car. No! In the car. I am
kids are gonna be coming home. Tell me why you're arresting me. Why am I being arrested, you stupid? I have kids. I don't.
The suspect has been identified as Angela Rose McCraw Hester. She is currently being held in an Idaho jail on a murder warrant. We can tell you she is the wife of the man who used to be married to the victim.
But how did Annie Hester not recognize Angie if she broke in and tortured her for like 3.5 hours, stabbing her slowly to death? How did Annie not know her? She would have known Angie, right? Quite simply, she was probably wearing a disguise or had, Annie blindfolded up. Police certainly thought Matt was involved, they just couldn't prove it.
Our investigation clearly shows that Angela committed the murder against Annastasia. We're not here to discuss it after. I don't care what you think. In fact, you've been under surveillance for the last 2 weeks by the U.S. Marshals. So we've got you walking across the parking lot at Costco, picking up soda boxes and water bottles, whatever you were doing. You're not naked, you're not walking with a cane. I'm not buying the fibromyalgia. I'm not buying it, okay?
He, though, was happy to throw Angie under the bus. He said he woke up and she had just come home, covered in blood. And then when he learned Annie was dead the next day, he still didn't ask. He also said Angie tried to hire ex-husband Aaron McGraw to do it. 15 grand was supposed to be the payment, but it didn't work out. They couldn't afford it, he said. Aaron McGraw would completely deny this. He would say, no, they never asked me to kill somebody, and if they did, I would shoot that shit down. Angie was taken back to Portland and was looking at the death penalty for breaking into Annie's house, torturing her, and stabbing her to death. Matt was arrested in 2019, 2 years after Angie, on charges of conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit murder, and hindering prosecution. It seems they'd been building their case for quite some time.
The 38-year-old is now behind bars for his role in the June 2016 murder of his ex-wife and woman he shares a child with. A lot of police work led to the charges Hester is facing: criminal conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation of murder, and hindering prosecution.
And not even the Shari, the Roshan, the Sharta, the Woodlings, or the Groka could help Matt Hester now. Neither case, though, would end up going to trial. Both pleaded guilty to the charges. Angie Hester McGraw got 25 years to life. Matt Hester got 5 years, and he could be out on parole as early as 2023. He wasn't charged with murder because, they said they didn't want to shoot their shot, and they might be saving that for later. And there you have it, once again a twisted plot of a whole family comes together to kill a part of it, and the good old getting someone to do the dirty work for you. It's actually startling that he could persuade Angie. And everybody liked Angie. She was seemingly a normal person until she tortured somebody to death. Matt also recorded his other non-fantasy writings on his blog, and also his dreams. They say there's nothing more boring than hearing about someone's dreams, and frankly, I agree. Because I was begging to read more of his fantasy shit after a paragraph. Anyways, one of the writings from January 2019, right before he was arrested, is called Erasing the Evidence, which I find very funny because he did a shit job. But he wouldn't have gotten caught in Entil, let me tell you. Thank you for watching. It means a lot if you got to this part of the video, which is the end. It really does mean so much to me that you watched the whole video, so thank you. Right here before I go, please subscribe if you'd like to see 2 true crime videos every week. Tuesdays and Fridays, my friends. 3 p.m. BST, 8 p.m. Irish time. Also, if you'd like to check out Patreon, where you can get early access videos, bonus videos, a few other bits and bobs, that's down in the description below, as is some That Chapter mugs, t-shirts, and some, bits and bobs. Right, go on here. I'll see you as always real soon in the next video, but until then, please take care of each other. Kiss all of you. Mike out.